Hi everyone, I'm Antonia and welcome to the second episode of my knitting journal. Today I have to share with you guys some of my finished objects and also a few whips that I've got ongoing since last time. I guess I'll start with what I'm wearing today. This is my sweater number 15 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It's got these lovely open sleeves since there's not really any decreases the whole way through, so nice open cuff and just this lovely cable pattern that goes all the way through. So a little bit complex, but also kind of basic and simple in terms of construction in general. I love the little cable details around the neckline when you're joining the neck hole and all of the yoke and everything together. It's a really pretty details on this one, so I love it. Unfortunately for me, I knitted this in probably the itchiest yarn combination I've ever used. Maybe it's a bit counterintuitive because I'm kind of wearing it next to skin right now on the neck, but if I'm going a whole day wearing this, I have to wear like a full turtleneck underneath and full long sleeves also underneath, and sometimes I can still feel it through the fabric. Especially if it's like a thin underlayer type of turtleneck, I can still feel it through the fabric. But it's just so pretty that I can't not wear it. I don't know exactly what part of the yarn combination is causing the issues. I did make this out of Drops Flora and the Søstrene Grene Mohair blend. It's 80% kid mohair and 20% nylon, so I'm more inclined to believe that it might be the mohair that's causing the issue for me and not the Drops Flora, just because in general I've used other similar drops yarns and alpaca isn't something that's super sensitive to me. I have a lot of scarves and neck garments that are made of alpaca that don't bother me, and wool as well. So I'm not sure, but it is a lovely fabric in the end to look at, and it feels nice on the hands, but just on sensitive skin it is a little bit too itchy, unfortunately. I knitted this up in a size extra small because the mohair in question I got on a trip when I was in Amsterdam, so I wasn't sure if I had enough for the whole project, and I was really worried that I was going to run out, and they don't have any stores here where I am, so I wouldn't be able to get more even if I needed some. So I decided to just opt for the safe route and go for a smaller size, and then I just blocked it as hard as I could when I was done, and I think it still gives a decently oversized fit. The only thing is I kind of wish the armholes were a little bit larger. So maybe if I block it again, I would kind of open it up a little bit there. But for the most part, I really do like the fit of this one, and it was super fun to make. Although for a while afterwards, I never wanted to do another cable ever again, and it haunted me in my dreams. But apart from that, it was great. I actually haven't been knitting as much as I normally do because my wrist has really been bothering me, my right wrist. So I am right-handed, my dominant hand. My wrist has really been bothering me recently. And I'm not sure if it's because of the knitting I've been doing. I haven't really increased the amount that I've been knitting or anything, or the complexity of the stuff that I've been knitting. So I'm just kind of giving it a bit of a rest and seeing if I can isolate any motions that are the culprit for the issue. I can have some more on that later because I'm curious if you guys have any stretches or exercises that are good for knitters to kind of prevent injuries like this from happening. But for now, I'll get into the actual interesting part of all of the projects I've finished lately. So most of my finished objects are pretty small because of the whole wrist thing, but my first one is my Sophie scarf. It is so cute, and I made the smallest size. But I got this yarn using the points that I had at my old local yarn store, so I actually made this out of cashmere. Just in general, I usually don't make stuff out of materials that are this luxurious, and because of that, it took me a really long time to finish it since it's such a small project. And I was thinking, usually I am very much a, what do they call it? Usually I knit very much for the result of what I'm making, not for the process of it. I forget exactly what it's called, process versus project maybe, but usually I very much am a project knitter, so I still enjoy the process of knitting, but I don't choose projects specifically for the experience of making it. But because this yarn was so nice and soft to work with, I wanted to make sure that I really kind of drew out the process and appreciated working with it for as long as I could, especially because you can churn out a Sophie scarf in an afternoon or less. So I actually restarted this maybe 4 or 5 times because initially I started making this on 3.5 millimeter needles, I believe. This is a fingering weight yarn and I was holding it double, so I'm not sure if that was why, but it was just making a very stiff fabric. And I wanted something that was a bit more drapey and could kind of sit on the collar. Or I also kind of wanted to wear it as like a headband, so it needed to be something that could be tied up in a knot and have nice tails instead of being super stiff and unmoving. So I initially tried it on 3.5s and then I tried again on 4s. And then I think I forgot where I had last increased and I said, okay, well, I'll just restart, I guess. And then I tried again on 4.5s. And then that's where I initially settled on this. So 4.5 millimeter needles for this. And by that point, I was like, I don't care about the experience of knitting this anymore. I just want it to be done so I can actually enjoy it and wear it. So I finished it in one afternoon after I started it when I was just rewatching all the Hunger Games movies. I think between Catching Fire and Mockingjay Part 2, this was done. So a very fun, quick knit, nice for gifts and everything, although this is for me because it's just so fancy and squishy. I love it. I would definitely use the Nordic yarn Eco Cashmere for other projects in the future. I'm not sure how many colors it comes in. I know that this is a super, again, beige on beige is such a basic color. All my stuff is gray and beige. So I'd really like to make another one of these in the future in a more statement color, especially because accessories are such an easy way to kind of switch it up, and then you don't have to commit to making a super bright sweater or something. So yeah, and it's super satisfying to be able to finish something that quickly. I do have a decent amount left of the Nordic yarn Eco Cashmere that I would really like to make some really short penny gloves or something out of these, just as a really small accessory kind of garment. I would normally make a headband or something, but I feel like the Sophie scarf already doubles as a headband, so there wouldn't be much point in making another one of those. So considering I split it into two to hold it double, it would be really nice just to make a little penny glove or other fingerless glove out of each of these and have a little matching set. Onto my next finished object is I finished my mountain walk socks handmade by Florence's Pattern. And I think last time I was done half of one when I shared it with you guys, so now I'm done both of them. This is in kind of like a variegated color difference kind of yarn. So, okay, this one you can kind of see how it goes from a green to orangey and then just a little bit of purple at the bottom. Versus this one looks pretty different in my opinion. It starts at the same green, but then it turns into more burgundy and purple and actually blue at the very end. It doesn't bother me that much because I feel like the part that sticks out of your shoes the most, like this, looks pretty similar. So I'm happy with that. I wouldn't be that bothered if they looked quite different either, because I know that's kind of the name of the game when you're buying a variegated yarn like this. But I did try when I was in the store to look at balls that had a similar color sequence going from just the outside, but obviously looking at the first layer or two of yarn on the outside does not tell you what it's going to look like in the middle. So considering that these are cuff down socks, you can really tell that the first layers of the ball that I was looking at, where they looked pretty similar, are around here, and then they really started to change on the inner layers of the ball when I couldn't really check whether the colors were in the same sequence or not. But that's okay. I think that this is still a really interesting color scheme, and I mentioned this last time, I'm usually not one for very chaotic or variegated colors, but this is actually kind of fun and I like it a lot. The only issue that I had that I was actually really upset with about the yarn was that when I got to the very end of this sock, the manufacturer I guess they joined a new strand to the existing one, so it just shifted into a completely different color. It went from this dark blue up into an orangey green, and there was no blending at all. It was like they just tied a knot and joined maybe a new batch of yarn or a new dye lot or something. I don't really know how it works with yarns that are really commercially manufactured like that. So this was going to be a toe that was a completely different color, which was really bothering me. I was able to kind of unroll the rest of the yarn I had and find a spot where it was close to matching, but you can see that there's still like a line around the toe of where the color changed when the new section was joined. Overall, it doesn't bother me that much because it was pretty much just at the toe, so it's like a very convenient spot to have that happen. But if it had happened like throughout towards the middle of this cuff or leg part or something, I would have been really upset. So overall, I think I'm going to stick away from buying the Kroy variegated yarns for the next little while. I do have one more Kroy sock yarn in stash, and it's just a classic black color, so there's no color changes or anything. So I think that I'm going to knit those up into a vanilla sock or something. But then after that, I really want to try exploring different sock yarns because every sock that I've made has been in Kroy sock just because it's so convenient for me to buy. I really wish that there were more local yarn stores that were closer to where I live. It just sucks that I have to take such an effort to go out somewhere and look for yarn, whereas where I used to live before, you could walk and find like a few different yarn stores that had really nice selection that you could just access really conveniently. But where I live right now, it's not that convenient to go to yarn stores, which is why all of my socks end up being Kroy sock, because at the end of the day, Michael's is so much closer for me to get to than anywhere else. But I was seeing specifically like the Cascade yarn, sock yarn, last time I was in a yarn store, which I think would also be an affordable option and seems pretty nice to make socks out of. So I'd love to make a pair of those eventually. Those two small projects are all of the finished objects that I have right now, unfortunately, but I do have some updates on a lot of the whips that I've been working on. My first whip that I have to show are my penny gloves, which is, I know, very ironic because I was thinking about making another pair out of the Nordic yarn Eco Cashmere, but this is the progress that I have on my second glove. I started it a few days ago. I'm making these with my really crappy bamboo, $3 needles that fall apart, and they have the super gummy cord that gets all kinked up and everything. Reason being is that this was my airplane project when I was going on my flight to Amsterdam last year. So I wanted to bring needles, because they are needles in the end of the day. I especially wanted to bring ones that weren't going to be causing any issues with the security. And if they did cause issues with the security, that I would not be heartbroken to lose them forever and have to abandon them. I know if I brought my chow goos to make socks or something and then they took them away from me and I had to buy a whole new pair, it kind of sucks because they're so good quality and cost a lot more than these bamboo ones you can get. So I do already have one finished one. I made it a little bit longer than I thought I would, because on the airplane I kind of lost track of time and I was watching a 3-hour long movie or something and I just kept going and I realized it was a lot longer than the amount they say before you start making the thumb. But I really love this color. So it's not gray or beige. I think this is the Knitting for Olive Merino, fingering weight Merino in Plum Rose. I don't have the tag for it, unfortunately, but it's a really lovely color. It's a nice dusty pink, and I just think that I love pink colors, reds and warm colors like that, and I think it could go really well with a lot of different sweaters. I just think it would be a good accessory to put with anything. So even though I'm not bringing this on the plane anymore, I was worried that if I used my other needles, it would look different. So I'm sticking with the lower quality bamboo needles for the second one as well. And then they'll be as close to matching as possible. I do really hope that I have enough to finish it, considering that I made them a lot longer than they were supposed to. But this is a sizable ball left still, and I have a decent chunk of the wrist portion already finished, so I think I'll be okay. My next whip that I have some progress to share is on my Moby sweater, which looks a lot different than it did last time. So this is how it's looking. I finished up the body and I also finished an entire sleeve, and now I'm just actually almost done the second one here, and then after that, all I have to do is the neck and block it, and then it'll be done. So for this one, I did make, wow, just look at the amazing aesthetic safety pins on the bottom. For this one, I did make the arms a little bit longer than the pattern calls for, just because I remember when I made the Ingrid sweater, the arms just needed to be a little bit longer, but the way that the pattern works on that one is, since it's in these like sequence blocks of ribbing and then the lattice and then the moss and then the ribbing again and stuff, it would be kind of awkward if I just lengthened the last section significantly longer than the other one. Or it would be awkward if I lengthened the bottom section of the arms, because the pattern is kind of, the motif is the same between the bottom of the hem and then the bottom of the sleeves. So it would look a little bit awkward if the last section of ribbing would be, you know, this long on the sleeves and then this long on the hem. So I just kind of bit the bullet on that one and tried to block it out. And it worked pretty well in general, but I do think it would have been a lot nicer if it was just a bit longer in the first place. So I did just go a little bit longer on these, especially because when I try it on, and it's pre-blocking, I know, but the drop shoulder aspect of the drop shoulder does not seem to drop as much as I think it's supposed to. So because of that, the sleeves would be a little bit shorter if it doesn't drop as far down, and then I would have to make it a bit longer anyway. I did make this in a size medium because I really wanted that oversized look, and I know that a lot of people said that the Moby sweater kind of fitted a little bit closer to the body than they were expecting, or didn't have as much positive ease exactly as they wanted it to fit. So especially since I had the yarn to spare for this one, I'm making it in a medium, and I'm still hoping that it blocks out a little bit though after I've tried it on. So very happy with the progress I've been making. It looks so big and cozy, and I can't wait for it to be done. I think it'll be so nice to wear with some leggings and like a skirt. Even though it's getting really cold, it would be kind of nice to have that as a kind of preppy look with the classic cable sweater for the winter. So this is my last whip that I have to share with you guys. I have not touched it since I last talked about it, but I do have updates about its lore that I would love to share with you guys. So this was my tragic tale of my cami number 9, where it's got a change of the skein, had a super huge color difference, and I basically was saying last time that I was going to go to the yarn store that I got this at and just ask about what the policy is about that, because I know if you mismatch the dye lot or something, obviously that's on me, but I had no idea that it was going to be such a different color with the same dye lot, and I had already started knitting with it. There was a good maybe 4 or 5 centimeters of knitting with the different skein that was mismatched, so I was unable to return it anyway, nor did I even have my receipt, or was it in the time for the return, like the return time window, so I wouldn't have been able to return it or exchange it anyway. But fortunately, I went there and I just asked, hey, this is the situation. I don't know why the color is so different. You can't tell very much right now, but I'll put a picture up again so that you guys can see what it was like. It was really noticeable even when you're not in broad daylight. And they said, you know, that's not really what it's supposed to look like. They said, you know, we recommend helical knitting or alternating skeins all the time, even when it's not just a hand-dyed yarn. But for me, I've never really alternated skeins that much when I'm using a commercial yarn, and the color difference was obvious enough that even if I did alternate skeins with it, there would just be like a different colored stripe every once in a while, and it would not really mitigate the issue that much. So they basically just asked for me to give back the rest of the yarn of this ball that wasn't matching correctly, and then they just gave me a new ball of it. So, and then we went outside and checked under the daylight like this to make sure that they matched super well, and so I'm really happy that that whole chapter has come to a resolution. It was excellent customer service. I felt really glad that they were able to kind of address the issue and, you know, recognize that that was a really weird occurrence for the same dye lot to have such a huge difference. So yeah, I was really happy about that, and I just am not really feeling like knitting on a 2.5 millimeter gauge right now, so especially with the wrist issues, I feel like if anything else, maybe using teeny needles like that is not the best. So this is just going back into its nice little home, and then I'm going to put this back on the needles sometime, but that time is not right now. So those are all my current whips, but I do have a decent amount of yarn acquisitions because I got my yarn mail in the mail. So what this is going to be is this is going to be my Celeste sweater. I decided to go with Drops Lima to make it with. I had seen some other people's projects on Ravelry where they had used Drops Lima for it instead of the Peer Gynt, and it seemed like a really good option for a really good color range, so you can choose the different colors for each accent color of the colorway, and there was a lot of options for whatever you wanted to do, and also just giving a nice drapey warm final fabric to it. So I got some inspiration from a lot of the different projects from other Ravelers on Ravelry, and I made a huge Google Doc where I put all of the different colors in a little palette next to each other, and I went on FaceTime with my friends and I was sending screenshots like, this one, or do I do this one? This one has a nicer base color, but this one has like this warm accent color that I like. They're probably sick of me, but I finally dropped my conclusion for what I wanted to make it with. This was also the first time I've ever ordered from Wool Warehouse, and it's such an exhilarating experience waiting for it to come in the mail when there's no tracking on the shipping. It makes me feel like I'm living in the 1800s. And they give you like the cutest bag that it comes in with a drawstring and everything, so it was such a pleasure to get this in the mail. So I'll start with the main color for the majority of the body that I'm going to be making it out of. This is the color 9026, and it's just this nice warm brown. I really liked, I think one of the samples that Petite Knit made was with a brown color. I think it might have been Cocoa Nibs color from Peer Gynt. So I haven't technically made a brown sweater yet, so another basic super neutral color, but there are more interesting colors in the rest of the sweater, so that's what I'm using to cope with that. And I just really love this shade. It's a nice uni color, so I kind of like it if you're having a more complicated yoke and everything, if there's less variegation in the rest of it. So I think that this will be really nice to use, and I did buy a decent amount of excess just in case. I'm always worried about running out, so I think it would also be nice to make some accessories with the rest whenever I'm done with the sweater, and I think this would be a good color that could go with anything. These are the colors that I chose for the rest of the yoke. There's a nice little beige color, very basic, and then a kind of sea green color. This one is a mixed color, so it's got a little bit of heathery variegation within it. And then this one's kind of like a baby blue kind of color, and then this nice bright warm yellow. I can actually give the color names for these. So the beige is color 0206. The sea green kind of color is 9018. The baby blue one is 9027. And the yellow one is 2923. So I just kind of chose these since they went together decently nicely in my little spreadsheet that I had going, and I think it goes really well with the warmth of the brown as well. So I'm really excited to use these and get started. I've only had one major color work project I've worked on before. I made a huge cardigan last year, and that was to date my most intensely complex but also expensive, and there was a lot going on in the pattern. It was a colorwork cardigan that was knitted in the round, so I had to steek it at the end, and it was my first time doing a lot of these different techniques, and I just didn't read the pattern very thoroughly before I started, so I thought, you know, if I can Google it, I can probably figure it out. So definitely having my most expensive project also be one that you have to steek to finish was really stressful, because at that point you can't go back. Once it's cut, and there's no return after that point. But fortunately, everything went super good, and that's still one of my favorite finished objects I have to this day. But yeah, I'm really excited to get started on this one, and there's just so much beautiful yarn. Oh, I've never bought this much yarn at once also for a project. I know that sounds really counterintuitive as well, but I always kind of try to cheat the system and buy as few as I need and then just go back if I need to buy more. I've been really lucky, and usually they always have the same dye lot next time I go, So I haven't had any bad repercussions from my poor decisions from that yet, but it feels so fun to just get this huge bag of yarn in the mail. So yeah, that is my yarn delivery that I got, and I can't wait to get started on the Celeste sweater. The Celeste sweater has also been a main reason why I'm really wanting to finish the Moby, because I need to use my 4mm for that. And I know that they're interchangeables, so I could just interchange them on and off every time I want to swap between projects. But since the Moby is 95% done, I just want it to be done so I don't have to worry about unscrewing and rescrewing a million times, and just have it be done. And it can be blocking and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, very excited for that to be done so I can get started on something else. So that's all of my yarn acquisitions and whips and finished objects and everything I wanted to share with you guys. But I also wanted to just have an open question if anyone has any exercises or anything that they do or stretches for when they're mid knitting that helps with hand or wrist pain. I would love to hear some of that, because I haven't really changed anything about how much I've been knitting recently, or if there's different techniques that are better or worse for people when they're knitting to kind of avoid pain from developing. One thing that I've been thinking is I can't pinpoint anything else that I've changed in my routine or knitting habits since my wrist has started hurting, aside from the fact that I have been Norwegian purling like crazy. I learned how to do it like a few months ago, and it became my favorite way of purling just because I find that it's the one that I can do the easiest without looking, so I can watch a TV show and then just do that, versus if I'm continental purling, then I kind of have to like pay a bit more attention for me personally to bring the yarn to the other side and then drop it down and everything. So I was really loving the Norwegian purling, but I'm thinking that maybe the motion of taking the yarn to the front, to the back, and then scooping it back around again might be the culprit of why my wrist is hurting. So I'm in a huge love-hate relationship with Norwegian purling right now. I really hope it's not the culprit, but at the same time, that would at least give me something that I could eliminate from my routine, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it as much anymore. So let me know if you guys know different ways of purling that has helped your pain, or if anything has been particularly worse, because I would love to take any advice. So yeah, that is the end of my episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening all the way through. And it's pretty late, so this is going to be my last update that I have before the holiday season is over. So happy holidays. I hope everyone has fun holiday knitting and has a good time off at the end of the year this year. And happy new year. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.